Alrighty. We're going to go ahead and get started so we have enough time. This is ham radio class. I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of bios here from our stake presidency member, President Linton.
It's that second one.
Yeah, President Linton has enjoyed a lifelong career as a pilot. He flew the C-330 Hercules, a tactical aircraft plane known for its ability to airdrop equipment and paratroopers behind enemy lines. He flew more than 500 combat hours. He was grateful for the Lord kept him safe, even while taking off and landing from riverbeds and fields deep within enemy territory during his years of service with the United States Air Force. While attending BYU and participating in the AFROTC program, he met and married his wife, Shalon. Okay. Shalon's grandfather had a distinguished career as a fighter pilot and encouraged Linton to pursue his dream of becoming one as well. Once I landed on good terms with him, the whole family fell in line to support. Now, some 25 years after starting his Air Force career, President Linton is a retired colonel in the USAF and the director of military relations and chaplain service for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was recently called to serve as second counselor in the Holbrook Farm State. Okay, this is Brother Ellison. Born and raised in Northern Virginia, he had close association with notable United States Air Force officers, two of whom served as scoutmaster. He earned a bachelor's degree in Earth and Space Science education from the Geology Department of Brigham Young University, followed by a master's degree in public administration. He was a seasonal United States National Park Ranger for 20 years at Timpanogos Cave National Monument. While on duty, he rescued a 3-year-old girl that walked off the trail and nearly fell off the cliff that claimed the life of the young girl's family friend visiting from Russia. Mark was awarded the Carnegie Hero Award, Utah County Sheriff's Citizen Life-Saving Award, and the Boy Scouts of America Honor Medal for demonstrating unusual heroism and skill in saving or attempting to save the life at considerable risk to himself. The rescue story was featured in the March 2008 issue of Reader's Digest. Currently, he's working for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in resiliency operations, emergency management, business continuity, and disaster recovery. He's an amateur ham radio operator, call sign KN4MJE. He currently serves on the American Fork Hill Press State Emergency Communications Committee. Brother, take it away.
All right. Well, welcome. I'm just going to lead off by saying, after 24 years in the Air Force, I was really good at pressing buttons, flipping switches, and if something didn't work, then I had a maintainer, that would help me fix it. But one of the things that I noticed is the ability to communicate is probably one of the most important things we have here on this earth. And whether it's, on a spiritual sense with prayer and revelation, or in an actual temporal sense where we just need to connect and share and talk with one another in times of need as well as in times of just enjoyment. And so this opportunity to take the ham radio course was something for me that I thought, I've worked a lot with radios, but then this is a whole nother world in the amateur radio side. And in what's needed, it brings a lot of people together. And then it's fun when there's no crisis. It's enjoyable to be able to reach out and communicate. But then in the need of crisis, it's something that is essential. And so I emailed Mark because I heard through one of our staff that they were holding a ham radio class at the church, and the stake president had called me at the time to be the stake communication specialist. I'm like, I better get my ham radio license. And I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal. Then when I started reading some of the questions on the test, I'm like, ohms, watts, resistors, how many watts do we need to get past this, all these technical terms, and I'm like, wow, pilot, I just pulled a button and the radio worked. And so it was kind of a little bit intimidating, but what I found is as you go to the class, they kind of teach you these things, and they teach more of the specifics, and it's just to get you an overview, but once you're licensed, now this whole world opens up to you. And that's the neat thing, is it wasn't that hard to get the little study app that I got, and then to take the classes. If you do the study app, you may not get a lot of the background that you get in a class, but it will prepare you for the test. Once you have your ham radio's license, you kind of join a fraternity or a sorority of people who really, really love communicating, sharing, and teaching. And so it's kind of a neat little group to join. You need that license because communication is so strictly regulated, especially on the airwaves, that you got to be careful. I remember flying our remotely piloted aircraft. We fly them via satellite, and one day we were flying over there in Afghanistan, and all of a sudden our screens went blank, and then I was the director of operations, and so I got a phone call, and this gruff voice said, "This is Darkstone," and I'm like, "This is hilarious." I'm like, "Can I help you, Mr. Darkstone?" And he goes, "You need to stop broadcasting on this frequency. You're interfering with satellite communications, for such and such agency." And I said, "Well, we were authorized," and what it was is, anytime you broadcast on a frequency, there's a little bit of bleed over into some of the other frequencies. And so it's not an exact, when you're on this frequency, you're there. There's a little bit of bleed over. And so that opened my eyes up to how many other people are using frequencies. And that's why you need a ham radio license, so that you know within what realm you can operate safely and effectively without interfering with some of the other communications that's going on out there. So Mark Ellison is a great guy. I've met him several times, as I've made my transition to the civilian life. And but what's neat is he's got a ton of experience. He's the one that taught our class up there at the church office building, works in resiliency operations for the church. And they're the ones that in the midst of crisis, they come in and make sure that not only can we take care of people, but we can keep the business continuity of site, that we make sure distribution, food, all those things are still being produced and still being accessed. And so it's only natural to have him here. So without further ado, my plug is if I can do it, having gone through the class, anybody here who's contemplating it, you can do it. It just takes a little time, a little study, and then boom, all of a sudden you're in this group that really likes to share and teach and spread the awareness that come what may, we'll always be able to find some way to communicate with each other. So, Mark?
So President Linford, he's a brand new ham radio operator. I'm still a newbie. I've had my license for 2 years. But the real expert is Elder Stamford, who's manning the radio table in the cultural hall. He's been doing it for like 45 years, and he's over the church's Welfare and Self-Reliance's emergency communication group, and so he's the expert. I'm still there's so much to learn. You can start here and just keep on a lifetime of learning. So back in 2018, I went through a Lehigh Cert program, and they highly recommended getting a ham radio license. And so my wife and I thought about it, and then we joined the Timpanogos Emergency Response Team, where they required either to have a ham radio license or a background in medical. My wife's a nurse, and so that kind of pushed me, okay, I'm going to do my ham radio, and we studied and did that. We had that all that extra time during the pandemic to study and pursue that hobby. And so the Federal Communications Committee, the FCC, governs the radio licenses, and they've carved out certain radio frequencies on the electromagnetic spectrum, which is light, infrared, radiation. They're all on that electromagnetic spectrum, And so they have different frequencies that they've set aside for amateur radio operators. And so the FCC, they have a pool of, let's say, 400 questions. They're publicly available, the questions, the answers, and those are out there. You can study those. They have different categories like being able to read a diagram, schematics and so forth, safety, courtesy. And so if you have a background in science or electronics, it gives you a leg up when it comes to taking your test. And so when we do what we call a ham cram, there's a guy named Steve Whitehead here in Utah County that he used to teach it out of BYU. And he would, like, on a Saturday morning, it started at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, he'll have a PowerPoint presentation where he'll go through all the 400 questions and answers, and then gives you some time to study, and then you can take the test. I recommend studying ahead of time, but people come in there and he gets about 80% of the students pass from his one-day ham cram. With a Hillcrest steak and American fork, and with the class I taught with Elder Linford, President Linford, we spaced it over 3 weeks, an evening of 2 hours to go over the questions, do a little more, answer more questions, and give some more background. And I've heard of kids as young as 7, 8 years old passing their test and getting their ham radio license. And so there's local groups that are authorized by the FCC to administer the test. They have to have one officiator, then 2 other volunteer examiners, and then they sign off that you've passed your test and no one was cheating and so forth. And so it usually costs about $14 or $50 for the local group that administers the test, and then they'll send the certificate into the FCC. The FCC will send you back an email saying, okay, we have record that you passed your technician license, which was the entry level, and pay us $35 and we'll issue your license. And so the license usually comes something like this, an email. They used to mail them out. Then they have a little piece that you can cut out and keep in your wallet that shows that you're a ham radio operator. They assign you a call sign, which is 2 letters, a number 7, because that's our region for Utah, then 3 other random letters, and then you can apply for a vanity call sign, so it makes it easier for you to remember it. And there's certain criteria you have to follow. Usually you put down 20 different vanity call signs that you like, and they'll go through and see which one's already been taken, and then they'll go through that order, and then the first one that's available that you liked on your application, they'll issue that vanity call sign. There's different ways of studying for the test. There's the group, the American, it's ARRL, American Radio Relay League. They're a national organization. They do a lot of publications on books on how to study for it, how to put up radio antennas, and whatnot. But you can start with, this one's a more expensive one, but you can start with a Chinese-made Baofeng UV5R radio for like $25 and just get into the hobby. When you pass your test, you will not be an expert. That'll be your entry level. Your way into the like becoming a new skier. You'll buy your pair of skis. They might be a wonderful pair of skis, but it's going to take you a while to develop those skill set to be a good skier. Same thing with the amateur radio community. And so these ones, they call them FRS, Family Radio Service. You can buy these at any big box store, and it'll let you communicate within a couple of miles. But in an emergency, everybody has these, and so they'll probably get jammed up, the stations. With the ham radio, one of the big things is you can change out the antennas, whereas on the FRS systems you can't change out the antennas. And the higher your antennas, you can get more reception, and so you can switch out different antennas to give you better reception. This one happens to be weatherproof, water resistant. So if I'm caught in a rainstorm up in the mountains, I chose this Yaesu. It's a Japanese-made ham radio. You can program different frequencies into the radio, and you can get a shoulder speaker mic if you want to. You can accessorize your equipment. I have a handout here. If we run out, we have some more on our station there at our table. And there's the ham radio lets you get into these different frequencies here. There's different levels of license. The first license, entry level, is technician. Then there's a general, and then there's the amateur extra. They used to require you to do Morse code to pass off your license, but that ended in, I think it was 93. And so you don't have to know Morse code. People still do Morse code, but it's no longer required to get your license. And so during an emergency, the first thing to fail is communications. Our cell phones are on what we call a truncated system. And so each tower in our valley here might be able to handle, let's say, I don't know exactly, but maybe 100 calls every minute. And if there's an emergency and people are trying to communicate, all of a sudden those lines get jammed up, and it prevents everyone from communicating that would want to communicate to each other. So they recommend that you have someone outside the state to be a third person that you can communicate through, because you better get a call out, but not necessarily in if there was an earthquake or whatnot. But with the ham radio, it's not. There are digital versions, but the analog version, you can still communicate in the valley with your friends and family. And the higher you are on a hill, mountain, the better reception you get, just like any antenna. And then so because of that, the radio community has built what we call repeaters up on the tops of the mountains. And that's like a big antenna that you can program your radio with a certain frequency that hits that repeater, and that repeater can send it all the way down to like Arizona, up to Wyoming, Montana, as far as those repeaters are connected to each other. And so that allows you to expand your communication. They require power to operate, and so, but you can get that power from any power source, whether it's a car battery, a solar generator, and then you can keep that communication going with your. There's a GRMRS radio frequency. That's a limited band that does not require you to pass an exam, and you can apply for that for $35 for your whole household, and that will allow you to have another way to communicate. And so each person getting their own individual call sign requires $35, but with the GRMS radio system, it's $35 for your whole family household, and that'll give you a little bit more than what just the FRS radios offer. On here I show hamstudy.org. That's a Utah guy who's put this program together. There's other ones out there too. This one I found really helpful. You can go onto your computer or cell phone and log into their hamstudy.org for free, but then you can buy their app for about $3.99, $4 on your phone. And it, as you go through the 400 questions, they'll keep track of how many you've gone through, how many you've actually answered correctly. The ones that there's an algorithm built into it, so that if you miss that question, it gets put back into the deck. And then once you've seen like 90% of the questions, and you've gotten 90% of them correct, that means that you're ready to go take your test. There's sample tests on there too, and it allows you to do questions for the technician. Then when you pass that, you can do the questions for the general, and then study for the amateur extra on top of that. So that's a really awesome resource that you can have in your cell phone. There's different, I mentioned the ARRL group. You can join that. There's statewide emergency communication groups, all right, that you can join. For here in Utah Valley, I'd highly recommend the Utah Valley Amateur Radio Club. They meet down in Orem or Linden the first Thursday of the month at 6:30. They even give out prizes. They have a raffle a free raffle that you could enter and get prizes at the end. Get a new antenna, a new handheld radio. Noji is the name of the guy who's the president of that group, and he's been doing this for like 40 years also. And they have people in the club that are called Elmers, and these Elmers are the volunteers that are willing to go out and help us newbies put up an antenna on our house safely, help us learn how to program our radio, help us to learn how to recommend what equipment works best for this area. So that's a really helpful. And if you pass your test, they'll get a notice. They keep track of the different call signs that are issued. And the next month, they'll have a list on the screen saying, congratulations to this group of people that got their ham radio license. They'll send you letters that welcome you to the club. And I have different YouTube channels of different groups that go over the questions and answers and give a little more background that you can use that to study. Yeah, there's no age restriction. You pass the test, you're invited into the community. There's plenty of groups that sell radios, and you can start with $25 and go up to $25,000 on equipment, so it's the full range. And each stake should have their own emergency communication committee, and in our Hillcrest stake, we have one ward that does not have a ham radio operator, and our goal is to get all of our wards that have at least one ham radio operator. They could go to be stationed with the bishop, and they could relay information directly to the stake center and say, this is what we have going on in our ward boundary. And then when the Thistle landslide happened back in April 1983, a landslide blocked off the river. The river backed up and flooded the Thistle area. And there was no cell phones to communicate with back then. And so what they did is they had ham radio operators stationed down Spanish Fork Canyon every so many miles. And the sheriff department used that group to communicate from the sheriff's office in Utah County up to the Thistle area and get information back and forth during that emergency. And so you'd be, if you get your ham radio license, you can be one of those links in the communication chain. Yes?
Also, all of Lehigh City had all the CERTs leaders and they have their own tower. And so it's all set up in Lehigh to communicate effectively. So it really is beneficial for emergency where we live.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the Lehigh has a great CERT program, great leaders, great resources. We're trying to restart our program at American Fork, and we've had a couple meetings, but we're trying to catch up to Lehigh's CERT group. Any other last minute questions? Yes, sir.
The handheld has maybe a 3 or 4 foot antenna, and then these base stations where you mount an antenna in your house, they're much larger. Is that just a matter of the range they can achieve?
Right.
They all operate on the same band?
No, there's HF, which allows you to operate around the world, and that's there's different styles of radios. Some that are called beam antennas that send it off in a certain direction. But to start with, you probably want a dual band, the UVH, like ultra high frequency, and very high frequency. That would allow you the two most common bands in the emergency communication committee. They also call like 70 centimeter and 2 meter bands. Okay. And so you can start with a dual band, put that on your house, and be able to communicate with your local emergency groups. But yeah, there's different styles, different price points. I went ahead and bought one that was about $75 for a dual band to put on my house. But yeah, they can go up to thousands of dollars. And there are certain rules as far as how high the tower can be, how much wattage power can be in there. These are a 5 watt, and you can get the base stations in your house, 100 watt, and then you can have amplifiers and power boosters. But the handhelds are usually the 5 watt. Yes.
Does it require some sort of battery?
So this one does have a lithium-ion battery that I can recharge. It does have. I do have a way to have a backup, like 3 AA batteries as a backup. That won't have as much power. And then I can plug it into the wall when the battery dies. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
It's a non-emergency peacetime. Are people tossing chess moves back and forth? Is it like every topic under the sun, or
Every
what's
topic.
the chatter?
Yeah, every topic under the sun. There's a family search group that they talk about genealogy. There's a new ham. We call them nets. So a certain time, a certain frequency, a group of people on the ham radio will come together and talk. It could be Lehigh will have their net at a certain time, a certain frequency. The Utah Valley Club has their net. They have a new ham net for people that are just learning to feel comfortable on the radio. They have a ladies' night reserved to be a little more friendly for the women to get comfortable operating.
Is there a Mara net?
Which one?
Mara was called, I know here, some of they had Mormon something. That was super good. Do you have that here? Do you know?
I don't know if that name one, but because so many people in Utah County,
Yeah.
a lot of them are, but yes. Then the church has their emergency response committee frequencies. Yes.
Since there are like so many communities that get on the same frequency, is there other unused frequencies that you can use with your family and stuff? Like, hey, let's hop on this frequency to communicate.
Right. You can get you can say we're going to use this as our family frequency. If you have the right license for that, you can do that. And then if it happens to be during a certain person's net, when they're kind of reserved it for an hour, no one owns that frequency, but some cities have been assigned a frequency, and you can use that to communicate and say if the power goes down, the grid goes down, we'll talk on this frequency. And if someone else is on there also, just got to be polite, but you can use that same frequency for your family to communicate. Yes. Yes.
So, what happens if, like, can you add a new frequency, or is it just like a certain set of frequencies?
Right, it's a certain set of frequencies. And so like in your car, you have radio in your car. The government's allowed like professional broadcasting radio stations that have certain frequencies. And they designate these frequencies right here for the amateur community. And there's a wide range of frequencies in here. And so the ones that the technicians are allowed to operate, a lot more people are on those bands, but you can go in the general and get some more frequencies that not as many people will be on. Amateur extra, you can get some frequencies that hardly anyone people are on. And so this right here, this band plan breaks down those frequencies.
And if you hear chatter violating the band plan, you report it to the FCC or something?
Yeah, you can report it to the FCC. You're not supposed to be swearing or whatnot.
Or Dark Storm will call you.
Yeah.
They'll show up at your house. But one of the things I wanted to kind of point out is, in this country, this is freedom. This is not all other countries, and especially where I've been, they don't allow their populations and their citizens to do this. And so this is a uniquely democratic and a wonderful opportunity, because this keeps communication open. And the government regulates the frequencies, but what's being shared, who's talking to who, that's completely up to the communities. And what you're going to find is this is a wonderful opportunity to get in touch with a group of people from all over and share a unique opportunity to exercise a little freedom than the rest of the world is able to, and then to share some opportunities to grow closer to the community.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now rotate to the next class.